When you play College Football 25, it just feels different. And to be honest, there's a lot of different reasons why I feel like that's the case, but I think a lot of the insane level of detail they put in the sights and the sounds of the game it makes it that much better. I think there's a lot of reasons for that, honestly, but to me, it's the sights and sounds of the game. There's an insane level of detail on those, and it really amps up the experience. Today, I'm breaking down the biggest things on the presentation side of College Football 25. And while we do that, I'm on my journey to 300,000 subscribers. If you're enjoying this College Football 25 content, leave a like and subscribe. The most important thing that the developers mentioned when I was down in Orlando checking out College Football 25 is that every team is somebody's favorite team. And so whether you're JMU or Alabama, there's kind of an insane level of detail across all 134 FBS schools for the sights, sounds, and traditions of the game. The most in-your-face element of College Football 25 is the picture-in-picture system. When they first described it, I couldn't just help but think I'm going to hate this. But honestly, once I saw it in action, I kind of loved it. How it kind of works is that after a play happens, the gameplay goes to the top left part of your screen, and so you're still going to see in like replays, post-play scenes, kind of the pageantry of college football, all showing right there. And then while this is happening in the top left, the bottom portion of your screen is going to be your play call area, which you're kind of used to in previous games. Then in your top right section, you're going to have an area that kind of focuses on like important updates that are going to be beneficial for you in a lot of different ways. So for an example, here's kind of things you can actually see in the top right portion of the screen. Stat overlays and stat comparisons that talk about today, the season, careers, versus a specific opponent last week, for example. Impact players are talking about who they are, why they're an impact player, showing off their different abilities in the game. I think this one is specifically helpful when you're playing a new opponent or you're playing somebody and you're like, why is this dude killing me? You can kind of look at their abilities and see, okay, I understand why now. Individual player rankings for leaders in things like passing touchdowns, rushing yards, interceptions, and other stat categories. As your season or dynasty kind of progresses, your conference, media, coaches, and potential playoff brackets, all those polls and different brackets are going to show up there too. The best thing in the game, in my opinion, wear and tear. There's kind of a way that you can look at wear and tear on that screen too. One of the new ones they talked about as well is field goal kicker range. So as you're kind of moving down the field, you kind of need to know, well, how far do I need to get to for my kicker to have this be a realistic possibility? Well, they're going to tell you. Overall, there's like 400 different panels in the game to kind of keep it fresh and give you information. And in my opinion, it's cool. It sounds like a lot, but they do a really good way of surfacing that information up to you so that it's kind of there when you need it, but not when you don't. I never personally played actual college football, and I don't really know what it's like to run out of a tunnel in front of like 100,000 people on game day. But in my opinion, the way that College Football 25 captures the runouts with keeping the camera kind of tight and really just showcasing that action as your team kind of emerges out of the tunnel, I feel like I'm playing college football now. A team like Penn State, for example, comes out with Zombie Nation blasting, and you're kind of hearing the chants, and the entire stadium and the crowd audio is crazy, in my opinion. But you hear "We Are Penn State" being chanted, and you're like, this is Saturday. There's a lot of attention and detail that the team put really on capturing traditions as well. You're going to see a lot of different things in the games, and just know that they built actual props that were both accurate in like weight and size to really bring traditions to life. Rivalry trophies, they built those and mocapped them. Clemson's Runout, they literally built a 2-story ramp to replicate players running down it and jumping off of it. And the people jumping off of it were stunt actors they hired. So, I mean, you know they're official now. Purdue, they have their rotating bass drum for the pregame show. Oregon, yeah, the mascot's out there in the motorcycle riding around. They literally built a fake mascot motorcycle out of wood. How? I could not do that. Now, we're talking about a lot of great College Football 25 news, but I did want to remind you guys that I'm sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. If you love sports like me, their pick'em game is going to be your favorite. It's as simple as picking higher or lower on the projections that you think are going to happen. If those picks hit, then you can hit for some big cash. My favorite part about Underdog Fantasy, though, is they are always running free specials, and those are what you want to look out for. As long as Alex Pereira lands one strike, you are that much closer to winning. Again, make sure you use code GGB when you sign up for up to $250 in bonus cash. Squads like Georgia, Boston College, Louisiana Lafayette, FSU have tear-through banners and kind of run through pregame as well, which in my opinion looks pretty cool. You've got cannons that go off for kickoffs and touchdowns as well. UCF has smoke for touchdowns, and if you're Arkansas State, yes, they have water fountains that go off for your touchdowns. It's literally one of the best schools to rebuild. Something to note though is the devs did state there's something for fans of every team, and in my opinion, I feel like they meant it. While there's no mascot mode in the game, I know a lot of you are crying right now in the comments, but the attention to detail in the mascots is very good too. One of the weirdest and coolest things that they showed in the game is that animal mascots in the game, like Ralphie from Colorado, are going to have slight adjustments as they age, and kind of other mascots that are animals will age slightly over time. That is borderline insane. I didn't know that Boomer and Sooner have the OU logo painted on their hooves, but that's in the game. One of my favorite additions coming to the game this year too is turnover chains and different traditions they basically have. Every single Saturday you watch college football, you're seeing somebody get a pick or a defensive touchdown or do something crazy, and they go over to the sideline and there's something that you've never seen before and you're like, I had no idea that was even a thing. In my time with the game, I saw championship belts, mini basketball hoops, a chainsaw. You know they had that? A turnover thrown? There's a lot of cool stuff there. I talked a lot about in the stadium, but the actual stadiums themselves, there are over 150 of them in the game. And if I'm correct, I think that's the most we've ever seen in a football game before, so that's wild. The dev team spent a lot of time visiting physical locations, but there's obviously a lot that they couldn't visit. So for the schools that they couldn't visit, they reached out and had over 80 schools respond with over 80,000 photos in total for reference. So you can imagine these stadiums are pretty detailed. Something I love hearing as well is that the development team plans to update stadiums post-launch as sort of they get new architecture or maybe new designs from schools. So in my opinion, it's safe to say that if you see it on Saturday, you're going to see it in College Football 25. The uniforms in the game are pretty nuts too. There's different details on like the cloth and the sort of materials they're using. I'm not really anybody into fashion, but like you can see different materials actually within the uniforms. I felt like of the teams that I tried out, there was a lot of good selections for uniforms, but some of them have like almost 20 different combinations, which, what? There's fan favorites in there like UCF's Space U uniform, Oregon's eggshell uniforms are in the game too, but I have to imagine there's gonna be some uniforms that are fan favorites that are not in the game. I'm just gonna cross my fingers that they add them in post-launch. Something to note as well, the dev team did tease to us that there are a lot of uniform combinations that they have seen that people have never seen worn in an actual game before, and they're going to be debuting for the first time this season. So you're going to have some teams that maybe haven't had a whiteout before or have like an all-black uniform before, and you're going to see that for the first time. And that makes me really excited because the development team is working so closely with the schools that they have upcoming uniforms that have not even been announced yet. I've had so many questions about dynamic attendance in College Football 25, and I'm so happy to finally be able to talk about this. Yes, it is in the game, and they actually gave us a really cool example featuring FIU in Dynasty mode and kind of having a pretty empty stadium to start, but then it changed a little bit. After one of the devs won a couple of games, they got their team to be, pretty solid, but they ended up getting a big road win against Indiana, and they ended up being 7-0 pretty much around that point. The stand started to fill up a whole lot more for them. They weren't ranked at that point, which is cool to note, but by the time they ended the season, they were ranked. They were like 10-1, and they were packed out. They were having sellout crowds at home, and their stadium pulse meter went from being kind of weak and not doing much in the early part of the season to absolutely booming at the end of the year and giving them a real home field advantage. And speaking of the crowds and home field advantage, College Football 25 has specific crowd section layouts for each stadium. So each stadium is going to have its own band section, away visitor section, and a student section. If you're at a school like Michigan or Tennessee, you're going to see the pom-poms in the crowd. Schools like South Carolina and Pitt, you're going to see the towels in the crowd. And if you're in Missouri, the Tiger Tails will absolutely be there. One of my favorite things in the game was seeing the whiteouts and the different checkerboard sections and all these different patterns that teams have that are very unique to them or unique to specific schools, and just seeing them when you show up to play the stadium, it's so cool. I talked about it in a previous video, but one of my favorite moments was giving up a touchdown early and then watching my fans do the surrender cobra just out of disbelief. Your student sections are going to react to things in a big way in big moments of the game, both positive and negative. The dev team actually went and face captured both male and female actors screaming at the top of their lungs for major moments like third downs or big stops on fourth down or huge touchdown plays. There's also really cool attention to detail for like hand signals in the game that'll happen per school during things like pregame runouts or major positive plays that are going to happen in the game. I'll show a few on the screen right now to give you a sense of some of the biggest examples, but just know that there are way more than just what you see here right now in the game. If you're wondering about chants, there are tons of stadium-wide chants as well. What's really funny to me is that while they obviously could capture a lot of them in person, going to different games, there were so many they couldn't obviously capture, so they had to get, a little creative. The dev team actually went on top of their studio in Orlando, and they told us about screaming some of the chants and trying to get the cadence right, all the timing right, everything that they're trying to work on and make sure it's really accurate to what the schools do. And so with that combination of IRL and on top of a parking garage in Orlando, Florida, they have over 220 chants in the game. Even cooler, there's specific animations that are tied to some of the chants too. I can specifically recall Let's Go Blue being chanted in Michigan with 3 arm pumps, or at Florida State seeing the tomahawk chop along with the war chant going on. It's just cool to see the crowd actually doing an animation while they're doing the war chant. I've got some additional war chants on the screen right now, but just know there are way more than just this in the game. 99% of you are already aware, but you'll have 2 commentary teams in College Football 25. You're going to have Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit as your Dynasty and Road to Glory team when your weekly matchup is the game of the week, if you're in a conference championship game, if you're in a college football playoff game, including the national championship game as well. Outside of those games, you're going to have Reese Davis, Jesse Palmer, David Pollack kind of as your main commentary team. To be noted, if you're playing in Play Now, you can swap between the commentary teams as you choose. If you're wondering, are studio updates back? Yes, they are back, and Kevin Connors is going to be your guy, kind of taking you around with the latest news from the country. He's going to give you info on national upsets, various scores on games that are happening inside of your own conference, or even how rival teams are doing when you're in Dynasty mode. Equally as interesting, if you're in an online Dynasty, you're going to hear about the scores happening from other members in your Dynasty as long as they finished their game in that week before you've played yours. There's over 68,000 lines of dialogue. There's 870 hours that it took them to record all of that, and it truly feels like we're going to have some of the best commentary in a football game in a long while. The team also talked about celebrations in the game and how they built real-life trophies from scratch to kind of match the hardware you're going to have in college football. All of the trophies they kind of made were then brought into their motion capture studio, and then they really took those and their motion capture artists to have them hold the trophies and celebrate like they would just win the actual game in real life. And to me, that goes a long way. You don't want a player just holding a trophy like they're wielding a katana or something crazy. Like, you want them to hold it like they would in real life. I would also just say a quick note, celebrations. There's a menu in the game for in-game celebrations. So when you want to do a celebration, you can actually look at the menu, kind of like a Mortal Kombat or a Street Fighter move list menu, and see exactly which one you want to do. So if you're playing somebody online and you really want to tell them that they're too small, or you want to rock them like a baby or whatever you want to do, they have the opportunity for you to do those when you want to. A small thing, but in my opinion, it goes a long way. I've covered a lot for the presentation today, but as you can tell, the dev team, in my opinion, is doing a lot to make sure that College Football 25 is a game that, honestly, we've been all waiting 11 years for. Be safe, be smart, tell somebody you love them. Catch you guys on the next one.